The alarm screamed through the corridors of Harmony's Edge like angry metal birds. Dr. Kang Minho dropped his coffee cup and ran toward the docking bay, his white coat flying behind him. The hot liquid splashed across the floor, but he didn't look back. All medical staff to emergency stations. The voice crackled over the speakers. Unknown vessel has crashed into docking bay 7. Repeat. Unknown vessel has crashed. Minho had been working on this deep space station for 3 years. He had seen plenty of strange things. Alien traders with too many eyes. Diplomats with blue skin who breathed methane. But nothing had ever made the whole station shake like this. He reached the docking bay and stopped. His mouth fell open. The ship was huge. It filled half the bay, its dark metal hull twisted and broken. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a dim red light. The air smelled like burning copper and something else he couldn't name. Something old and dangerous. Stay back, shouted Lee So-young, the security chief. She held her weapon ready, her dark eyes scanning the wreckage. We don't know what's inside, but Minho was already moving forward. He was a doctor first, and doctors helped people, even alien people. The ship's hull had a huge crack down one side. Smoke poured out thick and purple. Through the gap, he could see something moving inside. Something big. There's someone in there, he called to So-young. Someone hurt. Wait for the hazmat team, she yelled back. That's an order. Minho ignored her. He pulled his emergency mask over his face and climbed through the crack in the hull. Inside the ship was like stepping into a nightmare. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that pulsed with dying light. Strange machines lay broken on the floor. Everything was wrong angles and sharp edges, built for someone much larger than a human. He found her in what looked like the command center. She was enormous, nearly 8 feet tall, even lying on her side. Her skin was covered in scales that shifted from deep green to gold in the flickering light. Her face was beautiful and terrible at the same time, with high cheekbones and eyes like liquid fire. Blood that looked almost black pooled beneath her. She was dying. Minho had never seen anything like her, but he knew death when he saw it. He dropped to his knees beside her and pulled out his medical scanner. Her golden eyes opened and fixed on him. When she spoke, her voice was like distant thunder. "Stay away, little creature," she whispered in perfect English. "You cannot help what is already broken beyond repair." "I'm a doctor," Minho said, running his scanner over her body. The readings made no sense. Her bones were too dense. Her organs were in the wrong places, and something inside her chest was completely shattered. "Let me help you." She tried to sit up and gasped in pain. "Your primitive medicine cannot heal what time itself has broken." "Maybe not," Minho said, "but I have to try." He looked at his scanner again. Whatever was broken inside her was critical. She had minutes, maybe less. He made a decision that would change everything. "This is going to hurt," he said, placing his hands on her chest. She grabbed his wrist with one scaled hand. Her grip was weak, but he could feel the strength that had once been there. "You do not understand, human. I am Veltar Sishan, last of the Draknari. I have lived 3,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall, and I am dying because the one thing that kept me alive has been shattered for 3 centuries. "What thing?" Minho asked. "My spleen." She coughed, and more black blood stained her lips. "Not like yours. Mine processes the energy of stars. Without it, I fade like a dying light." Minho didn't understand half of what she said, but he understood pain, and he understood that she was giving up. "I'm not letting you die," he said firmly. He activated his emergency medical field and began working. His hands moved quickly, following procedures he had learned in medical school. But something strange happened. As he worked, he felt a warm tingling in his fingers. The sensation reminded him of his grandmother's healing touch, the way she used to press her hands on his forehead when he was sick. Veltar's eyes widened. "What are you doing to me?" "I don't know," Minho admitted. His scanner showed her vital signs stabilizing just slightly. "But it's working." Behind them, he heard boots on metal. So-young and her security team had followed him into the ship. "Minho, get away from that thing," So-young shouted. "We don't know if it's dangerous." Minho corrected without looking up. "She's not dangerous. She's hurt." "That's a Draknari," said Park Ji-won, the station administrator who had just arrived. His face was pale. "I've seen the historical records. They're warriors, killers." "I don't care what she is," Minho said. "She needs help." Veltar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "He defends me to his own kind." "How strange." She looked at Minho with something like wonder. You really mean to save me, don't you, little healer? Yes, why? Minho met her golden eyes. Because that's what doctors do. We save people. I am not people. I am the last nightmare of a dead empire. You're hurt, Minho said simply. That's enough. For a moment, something passed between them. Some understanding that went beyond words or species. Then Veltar's eyes rolled back and she went limp. She's going into shock, Minho said, his hands still glowing with that strange warmth. I need to get her to the medical bay. Absolutely not, Park Ji-won said. Galactic regulations clearly state that any Draknari survivors must be quarantined immediately. They're too dangerous. She'll die if I don't treat her properly. That might be for the best. Minho stood up and faced the administrator. He was small compared to the other man, but his voice was steady. No. I took an oath to do no harm and to heal the sick. I don't care what species she is. You're risking court-martial, So-young warned. The council has standing orders. Then court-martial me. Minho turned back to Veltar. Kim Hyun-woo, he called to the engineer who had just arrived. I need a transport stretcher, now. Hyun-woo looked between Minho and the administrators, then shrugged. You got it, Doc? As they carefully moved Veltar onto the stretcher, she stirred slightly. Her hand found Minho's arm. Why? She whispered again. Minho thought of his grandmother, who had always told him that healing came from the heart, not just the hands. He thought of all the times humans had surprised the galaxy by doing what no one expected. Because everyone deserves a chance, he said, even dragons. As they carried her toward the medical bay, Veltar's lips curved in what might have been a smile. Dragons, she repeated softly. Yes, I suppose that is what we were. Behind them, Park Ji-won was already making angry calls to the Galactic Council. So-young followed with her hand on her weapon, ready for trouble. But Minho only thought about the warm feeling in his hands and the way Veltar's impossible physiology had responded to his touch. Something was happening here, something that had never happened before in the long history of First Contact. He just didn't know yet how much it would change everything. The medical bay had never been designed for someone like Veltar. The beds were too small, the ceiling too low. Minho had to push 3 beds together just to fit her massive frame. Her golden scales caught the harsh white light and threw it back in strange patterns across the walls. Her body temperature is dropping fast, said Dr. Choi Yuna, Minho's assistant. She stared at the readings on her tablet with confusion. But these numbers don't make sense. Her heart rate is 30 beats per minute, but she should be dead. Minho ran his scanner along Veltar's chest again. The damage inside was worse than he had first thought. Whatever her spleen was supposed to do, its destruction was killing her slowly. It's not like our organs, he murmured, studying the strange crystal structures the scanner revealed. Look at this. Her bones aren't bone at all. They're some kind of living mineral. And her organs, they're crystalline, Yuna finished, looking over his shoulder, like living gemstones. How is that possible? Veltar's eyes fluttered open. The golden light in them was dimmer now, like dying stars. You cannot understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My people were born from cosmic fire. We do not have flesh and blood as you do. We have energy and light made solid. Minho pulled up a chair beside her makeshift bed. Then help me understand. What does your spleen do? She was quiet for so long he thought she had fallen unconscious again. Then she spoke, and her words painted pictures of wonders beyond human imagination. Your sun gives light and heat, she said. My spleen takes the energy of all stars and turns it into life. It filters cosmic radiation, processes dark matter, converts quantum fluctuations into the force that keeps my heart beating. A tear that looked like liquid diamond rolled down her scaled cheek. Without it, I'm like a ship with no engine, drifting toward the void. How long have you been without it? 300 years, Minho's breath caught. 300? How are you still alive? My ship had life support systems designed to replace what my spleen once did. But they were damaged in the crash. I have perhaps days left. Perhaps hours. Yuna leaned forward. What shattered it in the first place? Veltar's expression grew distant, lost in memories too old and painful to share easily. The last battle, when my people made their final stand against the darkness between stars. The historical records say the Draknari were conquerors, Yuna said carefully, that they enslaved other species. Veltar's laugh was bitter. History is written by the victors, and the survivors. We were neither. She turned her burning gaze to Minho. Your council fears us because they believe the lies. They think we conquered because we were strong. They never learned that we fought because we were the only ones who could. Minho felt that strange warmth in his hands again. Without thinking, he placed his palms on her chest, over the shattered spleen. The sensation was stronger now, like touching a live wire made of sunlight. Veltar gasped. "What are you doing?" "I don't know," Minho admitted. "But something is happening." His grandmother had taught him traditional healing methods when he was young. Pressure points, energy flow, the idea that the body could heal itself if guided properly. He had studied modern medicine, learned about drugs and surgery and technology, but right now his hands seemed to know things his mind had never learned. "Impossible," Veltar breathed. The crystal structures in her chest began to glow brighter. "You are channeling energy into my spleen matrix. But humans cannot manipulate cosmic forces." "Maybe humans can't," Minho said, feeling the warmth spread up his arms. "But maybe this human can." Yuna watched in amazement as Veltar's vital signs began to improve. "Minho, your hands are glowing." He looked down and saw she was right. A soft blue light emanated from his palms where they touched Veltar's scales. He should have been afraid. Instead, he felt more focused than he ever had in his life. "How?" Veltar whispered. "I think," Minho said slowly, "it has something to do with wanting to help. Really wanting it with everything you have." The medical bay door slid open with a sharp hiss. Lee So-young strode in, her face grim. "Step away from the prisoner, doctor," she ordered. "She's not a prisoner," Minho said without moving his hands. "She's a patient. The Galactic Council has issued new orders. All Draknari are to be considered potential threats. She's to be moved to a containment cell immediately." "I won't let you move her," Minho said firmly. "She's too weak. It would kill her. That's not your decision to make." Veltar tried to sit up, and Minho felt the energy connection between them waver. "Do not fight your own people for my sake, little healer. I have lived long enough." "No." Minho's voice was stronger than he felt. "You said your people fought against something dark, something dangerous. What if it comes back? What if we need to know what you know?" So-young paused. "What do you mean?" Veltar closed her eyes. "He means the void touched. The hunger that devours light itself. The reason my empire died." "Tell me," Minho said gently. "They come from the spaces between dimensions," Veltar said, her voice growing weaker as the glow in Minho's hands began to fade. "They feed on life force, on the energy that binds atoms together. Wherever they pass, only emptiness remains. And your people fought them? We died fighting them. Every last one of us. We poured our life energy into sealing the dimensional rifts, stopping their advance. I was the only one left when the final seal was made." Her golden eyes fixed on his. "And now those seals are weakening." The room fell silent except for the beeping of medical equipment. "That's why you were traveling," Minho realized. "You were trying to warn the galaxy." "Yes, but I will not live to deliver the message." Minho felt the warmth in his hands growing stronger again, fed by determination and something deeper. "Yes, you will." "Minho," So-young said quietly, "the containment order still stands." "Then arrest me too," he said. "Because I'm not leaving her," Yuna stepped forward. "Or me. This is medical treatment, not politics." Kim Hyanwu appeared in the doorway. "What's all the commotion?" "Oh." He saw Veltar and whistled low. "That's a Draknari. Thought they were extinct." "She is the last," Minho said. "And she's dying." Yanwu looked at the glowing connection between Minho's hands and Veltar's chest. "Well, that's not something you see every day. What can I do to help?" So-young looked around the room at the faces staring back at her. All determined. All ready to risk their careers for a stranger from a dead empire. "I'll buy you time," she said finally. "But the council is sending a containment team. You have maybe 6 hours before they arrive." "6 hours to do what?" Yuna asked. Minho met Veltar's grateful gaze and felt something shift inside his chest. A connection forming that went deeper than medicine, deeper than species, deeper than fear. 6 hours to save her life, he said, and maybe save all of ours. As if responding to his words, the light in his hands blazed brighter, and for the first time in 300 years, Veltar's shattered spleen began to sing with the music of distant stars. The connection came without warning. One moment Minho was carefully monitoring Veltar's crystal organ systems, his hands glowing with that strange blue light. The next moment the world exploded into color and memory and pain that wasn't his own. He was flying through space between massive ships that looked like metal dragons. Weapons fired streams of pure energy. The void around him was full of screaming metal and dying light, and everywhere, always, the darkness pressed in from the edges of reality itself. Minho. Yuna's voice seemed to come from very far away. Minho, what's happening? But he couldn't answer. He was somewhere else, someone else, seeing through golden eyes that had witnessed the death of civilizations. The memory shifted. Now he stood in a great crystal hall surrounded by beings like Veltar. They were magnificent, these Draknari, tall and proud, their scales shimmering with inner light. But their faces were grim with terrible knowledge. The rifts are spreading, one of them said. His voice carried the weight of stars. The void touched grow stronger with each world they consume. Then we make the final choice, said another voice. Veltar's voice, but younger, full of fire and determination. We use the Great Burning. The Great Burning will destroy us all, warned an elder whose scales had turned silver with age. Better, we die as guardians than live as witnesses, to the end of everything. The memory jumped again. Minho felt himself standing on a world at the edge of the galaxy, watching as reality itself tore open like rotten fabric. Through the tear came things that hurt to look at, shapes that existed in too many dimensions, creatures made of hungry emptiness that devoured light and matter and hope, and the Draknari fought them, not for conquest or glory, but for the simple right of other species to continue existing. Minho, Yuna was shaking his shoulder. You've been standing there for 10 minutes with your eyes rolled back. He blinked, returning to the medical bay. Veltar was watching him with something like wonder. You saw, she whispered. The connection goes both ways. You experienced my memories. The void touched, Minho said, his voice hoarse. They're real, and they're coming back. Yuna looked between them with confusion. What are you talking about? Before Minho could answer, the doors burst open. Park Ji-won stormed in, followed by 2 security guards. This ends now, the administrator said. Dr. Kang, you are relieved of duty. The prisoner will be moved to containment immediately. She's not a prisoner, Minho said firmly, and she's trying to save us all. Save us from what? Ancient history? Veltar struggled to sit up. The effort cost her, but her voice carried clearly through the room. From the return of the hunger, the seals my people died to create are failing. I can feel them weakening with each passing day. Impossible, Ji-won said. The Galactic Council's scientists would have detected dimensional anomalies. Your scientists do not know what to look for, Veltar replied. They have never seen what lurks in the spaces between realities. Minho felt the psychic connection pulse between them again, and suddenly he could sense what Veltar sensed. Far away at the edges of known space, reality was growing thin, small tears barely noticeable but spreading. She's right, he said. I can feel it too, somehow. Something is wrong with space itself. Ji-won stared at him. Have you completely lost your mind? Check the long-range sensors, Minho said. Look for dimensional disturbances in the outer rim sectors. I'm not wasting time on— Do it, interrupted So-young. She had been quietly watching from the corner. Humor us. If there's nothing there, we'll know they're delusional. Ji-won looked ready to argue, then pulled out his communicator. Control, run a deep scan for dimensional anomalies in sectors 12 through 18. They waited. The medical equipment beeped steadily. Veltar's breathing was labored but steady. Sir, came the voice from Control. We're showing some kind of distortions in Sector 15. Very faint, but they're definitely there. The room went silent. That's impossible, Ji-won whispered. No, Veltar said sadly. That is inevitable. The question is not whether they will return, but whether anyone will be ready when they do. Minho felt another wave of memories wash over him. This time he saw the Great Burning, thousands of Draknari ships converging on the dimensional rifts, their crews pouring their very life force into weapons designed to seal reality itself. One by one, the great ships went dark as their crews gave everything they had, and at the end, only Veltar remained, too wounded to join the final sacrifice but alive to witness its completion. 300 years you've been alone, Minho said, understanding flooding through him. Carrying this knowledge, knowing they would return and no one to tell. Would you have believed me if I had simply landed and announced myself? Veltar asked. Or would you have done exactly what your people are doing now? My spleen is already shattered, she continued, her voice growing weaker. But the galaxy's heart will be next if no one prepares for what is coming. Kim Hyun-woo, who had been quietly working at a computer terminal, looked up. I'm running calculations based on the dimensional readings. If these distortions follow an exponential growth pattern, he paused, his face pale, we have maybe 3 months before they become big enough for something to come through. 3 months to prepare for a war against beings that eat reality, Una said faintly. Not war, Veltar corrected. War implies both sides can hurt each other. This is survival. Pure and simple. Minho felt the connection between them strengthen, and with it came a flood of knowledge. Battle tactics used against the void touched. Weapons that could hurt beings of living darkness. The science behind dimensional sealing. But most importantly, he felt something else. A potential. A possibility that even Veltar didn't fully understand. The connection between us, he said slowly. It's not just psychic, is it? Veltar's golden eyes widened. No, it is something more. Something that should not be possible between our species. What do you mean? So Jung asked. Draknari life force and human. Emotion, intent? I do not have words for it in your language. But together they create something new. Something that might be able to strengthen the dimensional barriers instead of just repairing them. You mean we could stop them permanently? Minho asked. I mean, we could try, but it would require trust between our species. And sacrifice from yours, Jiwan shook his head. This is insane. We're talking about risking human lives based on the word of our ancient enemy. Former enemy, Veltar said quietly. We were never your enemy, Administrator. We were your shield and you never knew it. The psychic connection pulsed again, and this time everyone in the room felt it. For just a moment, they all experienced what Minho had been seeing, the memories of a species that had given everything to protect strangers. When it faded, Jiwan was sitting heavily in a chair, his face in his hands. The council will never believe this, he said. Then we don't tell the council, So-Young said firmly. Not yet. We prepare on our own. With what authority? The authority of people who know the truth, Minho said. He looked down at Veltar, at this ancient warrior who had carried an impossible burden for 3 centuries, and the authority of people who refused to let others face the darkness alone. Veltar reached up and touched his hand. Her scales were warm like sunlight on metal. You would truly stand with me against the void? She asked. I'll stand with you against anything, Minho replied. And in that moment something changed in the universe. The connection between them deepened and spread, touching the minds of everyone present. Human determination met Draknari wisdom, and together they began to forge something that had never existed before. Hope. The first sign was the lights. All across Harmony's edge, the station's illumination began to flicker and dim. Not the quick failure of blown circuits, but a slow, steady drain as if something was drinking the light itself. Minho felt it before the alarm started. The psychic connection with Veltar carried her terror like ice water in his veins. He ran to the medical bay where she was struggling to sit up despite her weakness. They have found me, she gasped. The void touched. My life force called to them across the dark. How many? Minho asked, helping her to her feet. Does it matter? 1 is enough to consume this entire station. The alarms began wailing. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red as the main power systems failed one by one. Over the communication system, they heard Kim Hyun-woo's voice, tight with panic. All stations, we have unknown contacts approaching. They're not showing up on normal sensors, but something is definitely out there. Something big. Minho helped Veltar toward the command center, her weight heavy against his shoulder. She was dying faster now, the stress accelerating the failure of her damaged spleen. I conceal the rifts, she said, each word an effort. Pour what remains of my life into the dimensional barriers. But it will not be enough. I am too weak, too broken. They reached the command center just as the first void touched the station's hull. The thing that pressed against the viewing ports was impossible to focus on. It existed in too many dimensions at once, a writhing mass of hungry emptiness that hurt to look at directly. Where it touched the station's metal, the hull simply ceased to exist. Weapons are useless, reported So-Young from the tactical station. Energy beams pass right through it. Physical projectiles just disappear. Because it exists partially outside normal space, Veltar explained. You cannot hurt what is not entirely here. On the monitors, they watched more of the creatures emerge from tiers in space itself. The station shuddered as sections of it were simply deleted from existence. Evacuation pods are launching, Hyun-woo reported. But these things are faster than our ships. Through the psychic link, Minho felt Veltar gathering her remaining strength. The crystalline structures in her chest began to glow with fierce light as she prepared for the sacrifice that had claimed her entire species. "Wait," he said, grabbing her arm. "You said I could channel energy into your spleen matrix. What if we combine our life forces?" "You would die," she said simply. "Humans are not built to channel cosmic energies." "Maybe. Or maybe humans are built for something else." He closed his eyes and reached out through their connection, feeling for the warm sensation that had let him heal her before. But this time he reached deeper, touching something fundamental about what it meant to be human. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest or the fastest or the most technologically advanced. But they had one gift that even the ancient Draknari had never possessed. They could choose to sacrifice themselves for complete strangers without a second thought. The warmth in his hands blazed to life. But it was different now. Not just his own energy, but something drawn from every human story of heroism. Every moment when someone had chosen to help instead of flee. "What are you doing?" Veltar gasped. "Something impossible," Minho said. "Something human." He opened his eyes and spoke to the command center. "Yuna, Hyunwoo, So-young, I need you to trust me." "With what?" Yuna asked. "With your lives." The station shook again as another section vanished into the void. They could see crew members running through the corridors, but there was nowhere to run to. "What do you need us to do?" So-young asked without hesitation. "Link with us. Join the connection. But understand this might kill us all." Hyunwoo was the first to step forward. "If we're going to die anyway, might as well die trying something crazy." He placed his hand on Minho's shoulder and immediately gasped as the psychic link expanded to include him. The connection carried his mechanical knowledge, his understanding of how things worked and how they could be fixed. Yuna joined next, adding her medical training and her deep empathy for suffering. Then So-young, bringing her tactical mind and unshakable determination to protect others. One by one, the other crew members still alive on the station felt the call through the expanding link. Park Ji-won hesitated for a moment, then placed his hand on the growing chain of connection. "This is insane," he muttered, "but I've been wrong about everything else today." Through the link, Minho felt all of them. Their fears, their hopes, their absolutely human refusal to give up even in the face of impossible odds. And somehow that collective stubborn hope began to transform into something else. Pure energy. Not cosmic radiation or dimensional forces, but something uniquely human. The power that came from choosing connection over isolation, sacrifice over selfishness. Veltar's eyes went wide as the energy flowed into her damaged spleen. "This is impossible. Life force cannot be shared across species barriers." "No," Minho said, feeling the power building between them all. "But love can." The word hung in the air like a revelation. Love. Not romantic love, but something deeper. The love that made a doctor risk everything for a dying alien. The love that made engineers and security officers and administrators stand together against the void. The energy blazed through Veltar's crystal matrix, but instead of consuming itself in a single burst, it stabilized. The human capacity for hope fed the Draknari connection to cosmic forces, creating something entirely new. On the monitors, they watched as golden light began to pour from the station itself. Not weapon fire, but pure creation energy. Where it touched, the void touched, the creatures didn't die. They simply stopped being hungry. "The dimensional rifts," Veltar said in wonder. "They are not just sealing. They are healing." The tiers in space began to close, but instead of the desperate patches the Draknari had managed 300 years ago, these heals were permanent. The human energy was teaching the universe how to repair itself. More void touched emerged from the closing rifts, drawn by the unprecedented display of life force. But as the golden light touched them, they began to change. The hunger that defined them faded, replaced by something like curiosity. They were not always creatures of void, Veltar realized. They were twisted by isolation, by being cut off from the energy that feeds all life. The human connection is healing them. Through the expanding psychic network, Minho felt the transformation spreading, not just healing the creatures and sealing the rifts, but teaching other species throughout the galaxy about the possibility of connection across impossible barriers. The station stopped shaking. The lights came back online. And in the command center, a group of humans and one ancient Draknari warrior stood connected by bonds that had never existed before in the universe. Is it over? Yuna asked softly. Veltar smiled, her golden eyes bright with health for the first time in centuries. No, it is beginning. She looked at Minho and he felt her gratitude and amazement through their link. My spleen is already shattered, she said, echoing her earlier words. But it seems that breaking apart is sometimes necessary to become something better. Outside the viewing ports, former void-touched drifted peacefully through space, their forms shifting from hungry darkness to something like living starlight. And throughout the galaxy, other species began to feel the first stirrings of connections they had never thought possible. Humanity had done what no other species had managed, not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through the simple refusal to let anyone face the darkness alone. So what happens now? Hyunwoo asked. Minho looked around at his friends, his family, his species' first steps toward something greater. He felt Veltar's presence in his mind, no longer dying but truly alive for the first time in millennia. Now, he said, we teach the galaxy how to hold each other through the pain. 1 year later, the garden was the most beautiful place on Harmony's edge. Minho knelt between rows of crystal flowers that chimed softly in the artificial breeze. The Draknari blooms grew beside earth roses, their different biologies somehow finding harmony in the same soil. Children from dozens of species played among the paths, their laughter mixing languages that had never been spoken together before. The Galactic Council is still arguing about whether to officially recognize the new protocols, Choi Yuna said. Joining him in the garden, she carried a datapad filled with reports from across the galaxy, but 17 species have already implemented them on their own. 17? Minho smiled as he gently adjusted the soil around a young crystal bloom. That's more than last month. Word spreads fast when people see results. The Andorian conflict ended peacefully last week. Both sides agreed to try connection therapy instead of war. Connection therapy. That was what they called it now. The process of forming psychic links between different species to foster understanding and empathy. It didn't work for everyone, and it required willing participants, but when it did work, the results were remarkable. Any word from the Outer Rim settlements? Minho asked. 3 more dimensional anomalies healed themselves this month. The universe seems to be learning to patch its own wounds. A chime echoed through the garden, musical and warm. Veltar was approaching, her footsteps lighter than they had been in centuries. Her scales had regained their full luster, shifting from deep green to brilliant gold in the sunlight. But more importantly, her eyes held something they hadn't carried for 300 years. Peace. The children are asking for another story, she said, settling beside Minho with fluid grace. Even sitting, she towered over the humans, but there was nothing intimidating about her presence now. Which one this time? Minho asked. The one about the first healing. They loved that one. Minho looked toward the group of youngsters gathered under the shade of a hybrid tree, part earth oak, part Draknari crystal formation. They represented a dozen different species, but they played together as if differences in biology were no more important than differences in hair color. You tell it better than I do, he said to Veltar. They like your version. You make it sound like a fairy tale, isn't it? Veltar's laugh was like silver bells. Perhaps. A fairy tale that changed the galaxy. Kim Hyunwoo emerged from behind a cluster of singing flowers, his engineering uniform stained with soil and plant nutrients. The new growth chambers are ready for the next batch of hybrid seeds. We should be able to supply garden starter kits to another 50 stations by next month. The gardens had become symbols of the new era, places where impossible things grew side by side, where beings from different worlds could experience the same beauty and wonder. More importantly, they were places where the psychic connections seemed to form most easily. Any problems with the new dimensional monitors? Yuna asked. All green, Hyunwoo replied. No new tears detected anywhere in our sensor range, and the old ones seemed to be healing faster than before. It was true. The universe itself appeared to be responding to the new connections spreading between species. Reality was becoming more stable, not less, as if consciousness and caring were fundamental forces that strengthened the fabric of existence. Lee So-young approached through the garden paths, but she wasn't alone. Behind her walked Park Ji-won and a delegation of beings Minho didn't recognize. Tall, blue-skinned humanoids with silver eyes. Dr. Kang, Jiwan said formally. "I'd like you to meet Ambassador Nethys of the Cerulean Republic. They've traveled quite far to see our facility." The lead Cerulean stepped forward, her movements graceful despite her obvious nervousness. "Dr. Kang, Empress Veltar, we have heard remarkable stories about what you have accomplished here. Our people, we have a situation that we hope you might help us understand." "What kind of situation?" Veltar asked gently. "Our homeworld has been experiencing dimensional instabilities for decades. Small ones, nothing like the major rifts you faced, but they are growing more frequent. Our scientists believe they may be connected to our planet's emotional state." Minho exchanged a look with Veltar. They had begun to suspect that dimensional health was tied to the psychological well-being of the inhabitants, but this was the first direct confirmation. "What do you mean by emotional state?" he asked. The Cerulean's silver eyes shimmered with what might have been tears. "Our people have been isolated for centuries. We trust no one, connect with no one. We have become a world of individuals who live and die alone, and as our isolation has deepened, the rifts have grown stronger." "You think loneliness is weakening reality itself?" Yuna said. "We fear it may be, and we fear that soon our world will tear itself apart literally." Veltar stood, her full height imposing but somehow comforting. "Then you have come to the right place. We have learned that connection heals more than just hearts." Over the next several hours, they shared their discoveries with the Cerulean delegation, how psychic links between species created stability fields, how empathy and understanding could literally strengthen the bonds between dimensions, how love, in all its forms, was apparently a fundamental force of the universe. "But the risks," Ambassador Nethys said, "to open our minds to others, to become vulnerable, are less than the risk of facing the darkness alone," Minho finished. As the day wore on, more delegations arrived. Word of the garden and its healing properties had spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had never spoken to each other were beginning to reach out, drawn by the promise of connection and understanding. That evening, as artificial stars lit the garden in gentle patterns, Minho found himself sitting beside the memorial they had built. It was a simple crystal structure that held the names of every Draknari who had died in the Great Burning. The last sacrifice of a species that had given everything to protect strangers. Veltar joined him, her presence warm and comforting through their permanent psychic link. "Do you think they would approve?" she asked, gesturing toward the memorial. "I think they would be amazed," Minho replied. "Their sacrifice didn't just save the galaxy from the void touched. It taught us that connection is stronger than conquest. The children barely understand what the old galaxy was like," Veltar mused. "To them, it seems natural that different species should help each other. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we needed to start over, to learn how to be better." A small group of youngsters ran past them, chasing fireflies that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. Human children played alongside young Draknari, tiny beings whose scales sparkled like jewels in the evening light. "Your people saved mine," Veltar said quietly. "Not through medicine or technology, but through simple kindness. Through refusing to let me die alone. My spleen is already shattered," Minho quoted her words from that first day. "But he held her through the pain." "Is that what we did? Hold each other through the pain?" Minho thought about all the changes over the past year. The former void-touched who now served as dimensional guardians. The species that had ended centuries-old conflicts through connection therapy. The children who played together regardless of how many arms or eyes or tentacles their friends possessed. "I think," he said, "we taught the universe how to hold itself together." In the distance, they could hear music starting. Tonight was the monthly celebration, where beings from across the galaxy gathered to share food and stories and hope. The melodies mixed Draknari crystal harmonics with human vocals and instruments from a dozen other worlds. "Come on," Minho said, standing and offering Veltar his hand. "Let's go teach the galaxy how to dance." She took his hand, her scales warm against his skin. Around them, the garden sang with hybrid flowers and impossible beauty. Above them, the stars shone brighter than they had in centuries, as if the universe itself was celebrating. And in the hearts of beings across the galaxy, connections sparked and grew, weaving a web of understanding that would never again allow anyone to face the darkness alone. The age of isolation was over. The age of connection had begun, and at its heart, a simple truth that humanity had always known but taken 300 years to teach the stars. Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is the simple refusal to let go of those who need us most.